Hello, everyone. I am Melissa Forziat. I'm a keynote speaker and the host of this Halt and Catch Fire rewatch podcast. Now, when I speak, my topic is something I call Take the Doughnut, which for me is another way to say Carpe Diem. It's about going after the things that you want in life. Something that I wanted to do this year was rewatch the show Halt and Catch Fire, but this time talk about it with other people. And I've been doing that, but it's a pleasure to be able to now start speaking with people who actually worked on this show for more information about the show. So this is going to be another one of these awesome interviews where we get all kinds of cool details about Halt and Catch Fire. But just a quick housekeeping item, if you are brand new to the show, and you're looking for spoiler-free coverage, the episode recaps are safe for you up until the episode that you're on. These interviews, we could drop any detail from any episode of the show, so just be aware of that up front. But if you're sticking around, so glad to have you. And I'm here with my guest for today, who is Gabriel Dib, who is the assistant to the composer, Paul Haslinger. Also did some on-screen piano performances as well. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So good to have you here. I've been consistently asking this question to get started. How did you get connected with this opportunity to work on this show?
Oh, that was an interesting thing. I was on my fourth internship at the time in 2013. It was the end of the year. And I met a bunch of people that were kind of in the same phase as me, just arrived in LA we've been here for a few months at the time. And this kid, he I don't remember if he had a job and then he saw this opportunity, or if it was another person that told me about this and told me about that this kid tried this opportunity and he said so this is a little there's a little cloud in my memory here, but somehow they connected me to Paul. They said he's looking for an assistant, and yeah, and then somehow I talked to him and he interviewed me and he hired me.
Okay, so having a network certainly helps here. So we know
Yeah.
that Paul was the composer. You worked with him. What did your job entail?
Do you want the the answer as I saw at the moment or as I see right now, which are very different
Oh,
answers?
interesting. I'd like both. And to be transparent, I don't know a ton about this area. So I'll be learning a lot as you're sharing, but let's hear both of those answers.
I think I'll start from how I see it right now. I mean, I haven't been an assistant for quite some time now, but I did assist a bunch of people after working for Paul. And basically, the team there, the music team, it was just me and him. The score, the original score, right? And he was writing the score, and my job was to make his life easier. Let's say that's the summary, right? I don't think I understood exactly what the job was when I was there. Sorry, Paul. But I did try my best at the time. I'm sure I, never just 5 o'clock. Okay, I'm gonna go home. No, I was super excited to be there. And just see the process of an artist in a great show, because Halt and Catch Fire is like really, really nice show. There are some more formulaic shows, and not saying that they're bad, but I lean towards more the artistic stuff. And yeah, it was just helping him to, let's say, in a more practical way. Okay, he wrote the music. We have to make previews to send to the producers. We have to log all of those tracks or cues that he made into a system, make sure that everything is correctly registered, so we can keep track of versions, of notes from the producers. Trying to remember what else, and then anything that comes along, right? So let's say because the process was And let me know if if you want a longer answer, if you want me to, if you want to
No,
jump to
this
other
is
answers.
great. This is
But
great.
because if you let me, I'll just keep going. But let's say one interesting thing is that the because it was a show for cable, if I'm not mistaken, AMC.
AMC.
It started slow, so we had, some time between the first episodes between them, and then it started accelerating towards the end, right? So I think the last week of production, we were finalizing one episode, and he was working on the other one, so it was a little bit tighter on time. So that opens up space for, let's say, Paul wants to experiment with a guitar, and let's say he's a pianist or a keyboardist, and and then well, this was a more proactive thing, but I thought like, well, maybe if I make a virtual instrument of a guitar. So I went there, in sort of a spare time that there was nothing to be done at the moment. And I recorded a bunch of notes, made this virtual instrument for him. And he said, "Oh, this is great. This is awesome. I can just press a note and then I get all these notes, it's, yeah, cool." So I remember him liking that a lot. Um, yeah, I mean, other memories can come up later.
Well, you as you were answering that, something interesting for me is, I'm trying to get a sense of like how long, because once they're done filming, there's all these steps that have to happen to get a final product ready to bring to the screen. I've talked with some of the editors, and I have a sense that it took, weeks, months even to get like the final version and get through all of the approvals.
Mhm.
At what point would you and would Paul and you start the work that you had to do for an episode?
Well, see the mixed memories, right? And then what I know now and what I knew then. So at the time, I only remember. I mean, I do remember the fact that Paul would say, "Okay, this date we're gonna receive a cut." So at the time, I didn't think that they were working on it for months. To me, it was just like, "Oh, they gave us a cut, so
Yeah.
we have to do something." So, and I remember, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the first episode we had roughly 3 weeks to work on, maybe, if I'm, yeah, not mistaken. So, and then of course, I think maybe there was one or two edits to that episode, but as we got more towards the end of the first season, which was the season I worked on, um, then I don't remember if we got episodes that we had to rearrange or do edits on cues because the episode got edited, so maybe their pace was faster and we were just getting the picture lock of each episode.
So once you had done your work and put
Mhm.
music, once you all had to put music to it, did it then
Mhm.
get sometimes changed again? Where you had to
um
make changes to the music?
yeah, so in general, if an episode, has a certain cut and then they change, let's say, 5 seconds in a scene, and there's
Mhm.
music in that scene, there's two possibilities. One is the music editor in the show. I trying to remember his name. I think it was Jason.
Thomas. Oh, well, Thomas Golubic was a supervisor. I'm not sure who the
Yeah,
editor
he was the
was.
music supervisor. And sometimes the music supervisor, the music editor can solve it depending. And if it's something, that completely restructure the scene, and then the composer will have to come in and rearrange the cue. But I remember that *Halt and Catch Fire* didn't have a lot of that.
Okay.
Again, always the disclaimer that my memory could be a little foggy.
I feel like if it were really bad in that regard, you probably would be like traumatized by it. So, it sounds like it was, maybe some changes, but not necessarily way out of the norm.
Okay, let me tell you another story then, really quick.
I said traumatized and it just brought
No,
up a
yeah,
flood.
now, I've since *Hot and Catch Fire*, I think I worked on like 20 plus shows, and I
Mm-hmm.
wrote music on a bunch of them, most of them. Um, and I don't remember anything that was traumatizing experience. But in film, yes. In film, there was one film, for instance, that the director recut it 5 times and made it completely different. And that was I don't want to say traumatizing, but yeah, that's a good word.
Yeah, it's like it's not far off of the mark. Um, when you're, this might be more of a question for Paul, but when you think about the show itself has a tone, and then each episode has a tone.
Mhm.
So when you're getting these cuts to put the music to it, does it come with any directives about tone of what that episode is supposed to be or the scenes?
I'm sure it does. I don't although this was one of the only shows that when I was assisting or writing music for the composer, this one I was only assisting. Um Paul took me with him to the spotting sessions, right? So where the editor is there and the showrunner is there, the producer sometimes, I think. Um, and and in um that meeting, the spotting session, they would talk about each cue,
Mhm.
right? But I did not participate or see the this first conversation about the actual tone of the show. I can't, in personal opinion, I have to put disclaimers there, but but I do think that they brought Paul in because of his previous work in Tangerine Dream, his personal work, and Thomas Golubic probably thought, oh, this guy has everything to do with the show, and again, I just think this is the case. I'm not sure, but or maybe I heard, but I just don't remember. That Thomas Golubic brought the idea of bringing Paul to the show, and then the showrunners thought, oh, this is great, yeah. And to this date, when I rewatch it here and there, I think, oh yeah, this his music was perfect.
Mm.
Yeah.
Uh, when when you think about, and knowing that you've on other projects done the composing yourself, and on this you were assisting,
Mhm.
how do you know, like when you're, because when you're creating the score, when you're creating music, like it's infinite, like the options that are available to you of what you could do. How do you
Mhm.
know when you're on the right track? What was there, especially with this project, what was the sense of no, like how would you know, how would Paul know, like, okay, this is we were pretty close.
Yeah, I can't speak for him.
Mhm.
I do think in the case of I will answer your question, but in the case of this particular show, Halt and Catch Fire, I think uh, since they had the person with the sound that they wanted, they wouldn't have much trouble for that. I don't remember Paul rewriting a bunch of cues. I think maybe one or two here and there. He was trying to hit the mark on the first episode. Because then you're actually bringing the tone and the aesthetics of the music to the show. But I don't think he had any problems in there. Now, answering your question, in the end, it's you're right. It's you have the infinite possibilities in front of you, right? So the first idea is to just cut the infinite because infinite is too much. So as soon as you have the first conversation with be it the producer or director or showrunner, and they say, look, we like this tone, and they give you some references, let's say. And that depends, because they may bring you on board, like they brought Paul, because they like your work on something. So they're most likely inclined to already kind of like what you're gonna do. But there are lots of situations where that's not the case. It's like, oh, okay, you came in because of networking, because of a recommendation. People like your reel or some music you wrote for a demo, but you still will have conversations on, okay, what's the music going to be? And I'm gonna put it out there because sometimes some people, don't realize this, but the most professional ones, they do that. When the composer comes in, they also can suggest things. I think when people on the other side, directors, producers, showrunners, they say we want this, and they don't have any conversation with the composer, they may just missing the opportunity to blend ideas together, because the composer can bring some suggestions too, and the blending of things will bring a third thing that not just the producers or just the composer would do. And I have seen that, and it happened to me, and it's great when that's the case. That's great, because then you are actually collaborating on something and not just performing a job.
Well, so with that in mind, especially after you've already started, how do you manage feedback? Do you remember how you manage feedback on this particular project? Because you're going to get it from directors, probably maybe the network.
Yeah, that's a part that I didn't get in touch too much with, or as far as I remember. Um, Now in other shows, yeah, when you're in the beginning of your career, I think it's harder to deal with feedback, especially because you probably will be working with people that are not also too experienced, so it's always harder.
Mhm.
But for instance, when I worked on Castle, I was working for Rob Duncan, and I wrote some music on that show. Um, well, it still was. I still say that that was kind of the beginning for me. It is a little hard because it's like, oh, but my music is great.
Mhm.
You think, but I learned something really interesting there on that situation, which was every feedback that they gave made the music better.
Mm.
Always, always. There wasn't one situation where the music was not better. So that was great. It was I was as soon as I noticed that, I was excited to receive feedback, because I knew that they would see something that I was not seeing or notice. And then, yeah, let's go. Let's do this, you know.
Mm. You know, when people are sharing their thoughts but don't have a lot of musical language to give it to you with, um,
Right,
how do you have you found like any for yourself? Have you found any tricks of the trade for interpreting the things that people are saying? And that would be on
right.
other
Mhm.
projects, I guess, because with this one you were assisting. But have you found a way to like cut through that language gap?
Actually, when they don't talk in music terms, that's best.
Oh.
Because if you say, oh, I wanted this to be more aggressive, I wanted this to be more tender, or softer, or less busy, that's great. But if they don't necessarily have a musical background, and even if they do, they say like, oh, I would like less French horns on this. And then you have to tell them, yeah, but there's no French horn in here. No, that's a recurring joke. But if that happens, what are you gonna say, right? It's like, yeah, yeah, okay, less French horns, okay. And then you send the same thing. No, so yeah. But most of the time, also, if I'm talking about music with director, producer, I and it sometimes it's very often they will say, oh, I don't know music, and I can't speak your language. And I say, well, that's fine. That's just tell me what are the emotions, what you feel, and if where do you want to lean more towards, or what's missing, or what's there's too much of, and we'll shape this thing together, with your impressions, and
Oh,
then it
that's
works.
That's cool. Okay. So it's the thing that I thought was harder, maybe isn't. Um,
Yeah.
so in season one, we're going to see a couple times when Donna's playing piano on
Mhm.
screen. What was your role in helping this to come to the screen?
Right. That was something that it, it kind of came by chance, because Paul came to me and said, "Oh, I need to do this thing." And then I was in a moment that I really wanted to participate on as much as I could. And I said, "Well, I she's gonna play I think there was a Beethoven piece, Moonlight Sonata, third movement. Everybody knows that like fast thing, and I think there was a Chopin piece too. Um, and it was one that I had practiced or learned before, right? So I knew that piece. I couldn't necessarily play full, and I'm gonna just tell this story too, so people don't think it's magic. But I wasn't at my best piano fitness, let's say, at the time, so I couldn't play like full speed. But I told Paul, I said, because he was kind of getting a little overwhelmed. He was like, "Oh man, I'm gonna have to do this," and I said, "Can I do this for you? I can do this." And he said, Yeah, sure, because that's not composing. That's just like solving a problem, right? You have we have to give them this recording, and it has to match the picture, right? And I loved the challenge, and so I did it. I recorded it a little slower, and then with some editing techniques, I brought it a little a little faster, and I synchronized it to picture,
I was going to
and they.
ask about that. So
Mhm.
you're recording it, and among all the other things you have to think of, you're trying to get it to match what Carrie Bechet is doing on screen.
Yes, I was I don't remember exactly the how it was, but I think there were some, because not all the cuts were showing her hands, right? And it was,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was there were her hands, um but on the ones that they would show the hands, then I would just make sure that the passage of the music that was playing was had as much to do with what the movement of the hand was doing. But that was honestly, it's not that hard, you have the full control of the piece when it's on a timeline, so you just pull and stretch and squeeze a little bit, because I didn't record audio. I record a MIDI, which is just the notes information, which was triggering a virtual instrument, right? So I could stretch and squeeze the recording just slightly, right? So and then it fit, and that
Interesting.
was.
So if an actor is just like way off with their hand placements, just every musician watching the screen, you'd be like, oh, right. Is that what I'm gathering here? Because you're trying to match a
No, no,
song.
no, and Halt and Catch Fire was pretty good.
Okay.
Another film that's sort of a staple in my memory for that is The Pianist. At that
Mm-hmm.
the scene at the end that he plays a Chopin. I don't remember he plays a sonata or a ballad, but it's on point. It's perfect or really good. Yeah, I don't remember one that was. Yeah, okay, there are scenes. I think it happens more when it's piano. I think the directors take more care. I can't speak for all the recordings ever or films ever, but I have seen when it's guitar, like, worse situations where the hands had nothing to do with what's happening.
Okay. All right. Well, it sounds like this is also like good prep from Carrie Bechet, good thoughts from the director, and then you came in and you integrated it all into the song itself.
Definitely.
Um, you've at this point you've worked on so many shows, you've worked on so many projects. What
Mhm.
stands out to you as unique about this project?
Good question. Um, I think the fact that the it's well, first of all, to me, there are I when I think about shows, TV shows, and I'm watching them, there's two types, right? There's the recurring one. I think there's a better name for this, but the one that is like the story is sort of enclosed in its own episode, and
Mm-hmm.
there's the ones that have a big arc from beginning to end. It's just like a super long movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is the first thing. It stands out. Oh, it's a very simple thing, but yeah, but that gives the creators, the show creators, a great opportunity to develop a bunch of things, right? Then, so that's on the writing side. I think one thing that stands out to the actors are just great. They're fantastic. Um, let's see, the aesthetics, the cinematography, the photography. It's I don't know. I don't want to be. It's hard to say because it's not an objective measure. It's my taste. It just happens to be something that I love. I felt very lucky to participate on it.
Yeah. Are there any other experiences that you wanted to share that maybe I didn't ask about
Oh, there's lots
on
of
on this
things.
show, I should say?
Well, I think um okay, random things, right? So I think I'm Brazilian, right? I came from Brazil. I came here in 2011. I went for school to school for a master's, and then I came to LA and then ended up getting this job. But quite some experiences in Brazil working in music houses there. People were really rough, right? And you know who you are if they will not, if they watch it, but that's fine. I have a good relationship with all of them, even though they were rough. Business, personal relationships is something different. And one thing that stood out for me is that everybody was always super nice. Paul was hard here and there, but in general, he was nice. People that, at the spotting sessions, the showrunner, they would look at, who am I in the middle of all that? I'm just a guy taking some notes for Paul. That would not make any difference in theory. And still, they were super nice. And I remember there was end of first season party at Thomas' house, and Paul couldn't go because he already had a trip scheduled to Austria, I think. And I went there, and I didn't want anything. I just want to celebrate that we ended the season and the boat didn't hit the iceberg. Right? It was actually great. And everyone was super nice to me there. They remembered me, they talked to me. And this was really nice. I think no matter what happens, there's no reason for whoever you are to not be nice to somebody, even if they are like, just starting.
Yeah.
And I passed that along, when I, not that I got, yet super far, but whenever I meet somebody that is, let's say, 10 years behind me in experience and portfolio and all that, I just treat them nice.
What a great takeaway from the show. I know it's a very strange time in your industry. Is there anything that you're working on or that you've recently worked on that you can share with us or that you want to plug? And I'm going to try to keep that as broad as possible because I know it's been such a strange time with all the strikes in the past year. But anything you want to
Well,
plug?
well, I want to say we never know who's going to be listening, right? So I want to say something short an experience, right? Since if you look at the last 5 years, we had the pandemic and then strikes, and it was rough for a lot of the people in the industry, or most of them, let's say. And one thing that happened to me is because mostly, but not only because of that experience, I said that I made something for Paul. I made that virtual instrument, and he said, "Man, this was really good." Other places I went to, they also said that, and that involved a little bit of not just recordings, but in editing sound and all that, but also coding, some scripting. And because I had this experience since I was a kid. I was a nerd. I'm still a nerd, but I liked coding, and I kept going with that. And then when the pandemic came, I kept coding, and and people started hiring me because I was a coder as well. And I don't want to make this too long, but cut to now. I Most of the work I'm doing right now is coding. And for one reason, because the the opportunity of having things that are outside of music made or let's say a revenue outside of music made me look at all the opportunities I had in music and be more selective,
Hmm.
which is a great place to be at. So when somebody says, usually we think like, it's my conservative parent or something, and somebody in my family said, "Oh, you should get a real job instead of music." Well, I'm not saying they're right, but there's a little bit of truth in that, in a sense that if you, as an artist, if you have a job that pays your bills, you can, but does, one that doesn't also eat all your time, right? You have to have some time for yourself. Uh, you can be more selective about the stuff you want to be involved with. And so let's say, for instance, with Paul, it was great. It was a great experience. I had other great experiences after, but I also had experiences where I was only working on those projects because I needed the money. And in one side we can say like, yeah, don't be spoiled, just work is, make life has have a dignity and all that. Right. But there's a limit. I think that if you're mostly working on things that you don't care about, okay, it's any work is honorable and you should do it because it pays the bills. But if you're mostly doing that, then it starts crushing your soul. And no artist started because they are super excited to write music for music libraries, for instance, which you just copy, 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 copy. I'm not spitting on the work that I had before, but I'm saying that should be more transitory work. You go there, you do your part, you get some experience, but move on. I know people that stay there, and then you talk to them and they seem like sour with life. And it's sad to see people that got excited with art sour with life. And it's not also the case to say, uh, oh, but if they are artists, they should just, do something else, not work in the industry. Well, not really. I think there is a way out. The way out is have another ability, make some money. It doesn't have to be your whole revenue, but something that will make you able to say no to certain things, right? So you say yes, you get some experience that, but when you want to say no, then you can say no. And so now what I have is I have this whole software uh, business, let's say, or activity going on. And when a movie comes in or an opportunity comes in, I'm able to say, oh, okay, I'm gonna go into this, or because this is really nice, or it's not because just, oh, it's paying well, right? I mean, if they give you $2 million to work on, I don't know, the Talking Chihuahua 9, I don't know. Maybe on the first one that's fine, but I haven't met a composer that they were in, let's say, season 7 of something, and they were too excited about that something. Usually they were like, "Yeah, I'm doing this because this is a business." So okay, business, fine. But yeah, so the takeaway is, or my experience, not saying it's the absolute truth, but it works for me, is having something that I'm also excited about, super excited about, and I'm always learning more and more and more and more and getting better at, and people are seeing that and then hire me over and over for that. And there's another thing. It's great because it's also a different relationship with money. When you're writing software, it's well, this is the price. Or when you're writing music, sometimes people come to you and say, oh yeah, our indie movie, we don't have any more money because we spent everything on the the production. And then you end up doing it anyways because you like the director, it's your friend, or you like the movie, or you like making music and you want to do it. But it's not really sustainable to go forever like that, right? So yeah, I think it works really well having the two things going on right now.
So my takeaway there is, like, if we look at IMDb for you, or if we look at your resume, like the things that you've done recently are things that you chose to do, that you were interested to do, that you were
Yeah,
when you wanted to say no, you've said the no's. So the stuff that's on your resume is the stuff that was a yes.
exactly.
It's really nice to hear. Thank you so much for taking some time and talking with me about your experience working on this show, about an area that I honestly don't know a lot about. So I think it's really helpful to get your viewpoint and hear a little bit about what was going on behind the scenes as you all were working to bring music to the screen for us.
Sure. Well, thanks again. Thanks for reaching out. Thanks for following up, because when you reached out first time, I thought like, oh man, talk about this thing like 10 years ago. But and I was really busy. I'm still busy, but at the time I said, well, I'm just gonna kick this to October, and you just kept at it, and I said, okay, no, I respect that. you put on your calendar, you reached out again. It's like, okay, all right, okay, let's do this.
Nobody can tell me I haven't been persistent in this process.
No, I do admire
Oh
that.
my gosh. I'm just so glad that I've had a chance to talk with you, especially because this is an area that I don't know a lot about, and I feel like I've underrepresented the composed music on this show and how I
Right.
talked about the show, often because I didn't have the language for it. So it's really important to be able to talk with you today, and thank you for that. And to everybody who's watching this interview, thank you for doing that, and please go out there and watch Halt and Catch Fire. Bye everyone.